Once upon a time, two friends joined forces to bring you the best in horror entertainment. Brian from the north, Tim from the south, each bringing their own unique perspective to the horror community. Movie reviews, Blu-ray releases, beer pairings, games, and more. Welcome to your new home for horror. This is Civil Gore.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to episode 234 of the Civil Gore Podcast. I'm your host, Tim.
And this is Brian. And I feel like I haven't talked to Tim in a long time. We haven't done it. I feel like it's been like months since we've done an episode, even though we've done like a couple of little ones here and there. And Tim and I pretty much talk every day anyway. But it was so weird.
Thanks to everybody for being patient with us as we tried to get our schedule back on track, because we had Brian's vacation, we had my vacation, I had my daughter's birthday, I had crazy work stuff that popped up where I was working like 18-hour days for a week, and then we had I got sick one of those weeks.
You were sick. It was crazy. It was like this is definitely. It was funny. It was the worst. Probably the worst Summer Slaycation to pick such a big thing like the Universal monsters, because it kind of disrupts the flow a little bit. But then again, if you think about it, the way we're doing these kind of disrupts the flow of the whole like I think I want to, like, once this is all done, like on my leisure, I am going to rewatch them in like the order of their release, regardless of what bucket it falls into per monster, because I think it probably will flow better.
Yeah,
in the stories, but based off, but by our Summer Slaycation rules. I mean, like it's like we're being held to it. But you know what I mean? Like our theme that we usually have, it's per, like either per villain or per, grouping like that. So I mean, the only way I think to do it to make it fit properly into the Summer Slaycation was probably this way. But
and we were following the Blu-ray sets too. We were using their groupings kind of as a foundation for how we were going to group them, so that you guys could follow along if you had the same sets and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's like I think it works okay up until this series, because the Wolfman does it like you figure he seems like he was such a bigger presence in the monster. It's because he featured in other films that were pretty much broken into the buckets of the other monsters at some level. So I think like it's really, I mean, the fact that I was like almost like stunned when I realized, there's technically only two The Wolfman movies, really, like.
Yeah, really.
And the other ones he appeared in were like almost cameos, and he's like one of my favorites, and a lot of people's favorites. And so it's weird to think that it's like one of these, like almost like that Mandela effect, like you envisioned there were way more.
Yeah, and even the second Wolfman movie is Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. Now, granted, Wolfman takes over that whole movie.
Yeah, why is it Frankenstein meets? So it should be Wolfman meets Frankenstein.
Exactly.
Really.
Yeah,
and
it's more of a Wolfman
technically
movie.
Meets Frankenstein's monster, because Dr. Frankenstein's not in there unless they count Elsa von Frankenstein as the Frankenstein that he meets. And still, he meets her first, not she meets him. I don't know. That's nitpicking. Yeah. But yeah, we'll get into that, because I happen to absolutely love that movie, regardless of what it's called. So. Yeah. But we'll get into the reviews. But I guess we'll we'll do, when this is over, I think we'll do a catch up episode of because a lot of stuff's going on in horror that's going on, or maybe we can sneak in a mini-sode somehow just to catch up, because I want to hear all about, we want to do your Gen Con trip, because that got a lot of notoriety for, unfortunately, not the greatest of reasons. Turned out to be a super spreader that Tim, thank God, knock on wood, avoided. But
sort of avoided.
You got con crud. That doesn't count. I think that's you have
that's
to, like
standard.
If you go to a con for the full days and you stay at the con, like you travel at the hotel and you stay there. Now I'm talking about going like to Comic-Con for a day. But if you go to any kind of convention and you're staying there, like when we went to New Jersey Horror Con, you're there a few days at the hotel, and everyday con, you're coming back with con crud. You're gonna smell con funk. That's just what it is. That's what you deal with. It's.
And I got it was the exact same stuff I got when I brought back from New Jersey Horror Con. I mean, I felt the exact same. I knew it the minute I got back that it was con crud.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think
you
it's
could
just
tell what it is.
Yeah, it's probably lack of sleep, being around a lot of like, in a hotel room, in a usually not a lot of air that you're breathing on the con floor. You're and there you pretty much required masks, so you probably weren't really you only got fresh air when you really complete fresh air when you went outside. So it's like,
Yeah.
and maybe when you ate, but that, so it's good. But and I guess Cone was saying, right, they're gonna they're actually trying to evaluate how they're gonna handle Gen Con next year. I mean, what more do you want from them? I have to commend them, even though it turned out to be a super spreader. I think it's very misleading, because I saw a lot of people criticizing them, and I know I don't want to get too much into this because it's the Summer Slaycation, and the whole point I was going to say is we'll touch on this maybe a mini-sode down the road. Everyone criticized it, saying, oh, well, they shouldn't have had this kind of event. They took every precaution ever. From what I understood, and you can confirm this, right? First of all, you needed to proof of vax to get your badges, right?
Yeah, you had to have a proof of vaccination to even get into any of the Gen Con building events.
So, whatever. We don't need to get into that now. We got some wolfy stuff to talk about here.
Yeah, so let's get into our retrospective of the Wolfman. Now, this is a weird series because the first Wolfman, we're basing this off the Blu-rays, or the Blu-ray set that Universal put out, and they kind of grouped these. So we were kind of going by their grouping. So the first werewolf movie is Werewolf of London. This one came out 1935, so way before the Wolfman, and this was kind of their Universal's this was going to be their big launching pad for werewolf movies, right? Then it failed to do so. It never really caught on with audiences. So then they come out with the Wolfman 1941. That one's a huge hit, and that's where things get weird, because instead of making they do make a true sequel, and Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is really kind of a true sequel story-wise. But you also have him branching out. He hits House of Dracula, he hits House of Frankenstein, and he's kind of like a major character in other monster compilations, but he never gets his full series like Frankenstein's Monster did, or Creature did, or he's sort of like Dracula, I guess, in that respect. Yeah. In that, he's in like, well, Dracula was even worse because he was only in the first movie.
Yeah, really, the first, and the rest are all like Draculaconians, I guess. Like,
so
other
it's kind of a messy series to review. And like when we get to the Mummy, I mean, the Mummy is like probably the most cohesive series in that the monster stays consistent throughout. But let's get right into it. This is first up, Werewolf of London, 1935. And this one is directed by Stuart Walker, starring Henry Hull as Dr. Wilfred Glendon, Warner Oland as Dr. Yogami, Valerie Hobson as Lisa Glendon, Lester Matthews as Paul Ames, Lawrence Grant as Sir Thomas Forsyth, Spring Byington as Miss Eddie Coombs, Clark Williams as Hugh Renwick, J.M. Kerrigan as Hawkins, Charlotte Granville as Lady Forsyth, Ethel Griffiths as Mrs. Whack.
That's why I wanted to go through the credits until you got to that one specifically, because great. That's why I had to include Mrs. Whack.
Zeffie Tilbury as Mrs. Moncaster, and Jean Bartlett as Daisy. After botanist Wilfred Glendon travels to Tibet in search of a rare flower, the Mariphasa, he returns to a London haunted by murders that can only be the work of bloodthirsty werewolves. Now, I don't think Brian likes this movie quite as much as I do. When I first saw this movie,
I didn't hate it. Let's get this straight. I didn't hate it. I just, like I said, and I'll go into this more in the rankings. Why? It was like difficult for me because I love the Lawrence Talbot Wolfman. That's why it's like hard for me to like it to the level I might have if the other ones didn't exist. Like I definitely didn't hate this movie. I thought it was still a fun werewolf movie, but
yeah, the reason I like this one, when I first watched it, I thought it was super cool because I love the whole botany thing, because I'm fascinated by carnivorous plants, as you could tell from my Venus flytraps and pitcher plants. And this has a big carnivorous plant theme to it.
Yeah, that part I did like that element, how it kind of mixed almost like another little like almost like its own little like side story, so to speak. That, but it wasn't like just a throwaway side story. It influenced the entire story, even though kind of being like another little side genre thing, with the plants. But
the other thing I liked about it was I liked the makeup in this one. Henry Hull demanded. I don't want to say demanded. He requested that the makeup be less wolf-like because he really wanted to emphasize the man part of the werewolf. And so this makeup is a lot more man than wolf than the traditional Wolfman makeup, which I thought was kind of cool. I kind of liked the only thing I don't like about the Wolfman makeup is it looks. I don't like the little like black nose. He looks like a little dog or something.
Yeah.
I thought the makeup in this one looks a little bit more. I guess none of it's scary by today's standards, but it looked a little more creepy to me. This werewolf makeup. That's just a
kind of
personal
reminded me
opinion.
of Calibus from Clash of the Titans a little bit.
yeah, exactly. So that was another thing I liked about it, and the thing I really like about it is from let me put my film historian hat on for a second. But this movie was the first feature-length werewolf movie.
Oh,
so
nice.
It established a lot of the werewolf lore, that we would later come to recognize as like real werewolf lore. This movie made it up out of whole cloth, basically. So if you go read the trivia on IMDb, it's pretty fascinating. I've also read it in my book that Brian got me. But
I was going to ask you how this book handled this series, because neither one, if you think about it, had the true like werewolf transformation in it. Like it was definitely more man than wolf. It was like a man with a wolf on him, as versus those werewolves that like from American Werewolf in London, where it was more true werewolf, like prancing around. Like when did that change over? Like that's the part that I was curious about.
This one, so apparently, and I didn't know this until while I was doing the research for the show, but apparently the whole thing about a werewolf turning during the full moon was made up for this movie. That wasn't even a thing. The whole silver bullet thing was loosely adapted from folklore. I think the actual using a silver bullet. I think the silver bullet was first mentioned. That beast of the beast of Gavaldan or whatever, that tale about a wolf that they had to go and kill back in the Middle Ages or whatever.
Yeah.
And they used silver, so that was kind of based off of that. But the whole full moon thing is everything came out of this movie. So a lot of the werewolf lore that came directly from this film, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. Like it created, not only did Dracula basically create our modern depiction of Dracula, this movie, Werewolf of London, basically created our modern depiction of werewolves. Now, the Wolfman it was interesting, and I didn't realize it while I was watching it back, was when we get to the Wolfman, he doesn't turn because of the full moon. It's not specifically said it has to be a full moon for him to turn.
Right, yeah, that was a little different. They changed it a little bit.
But then they went back, and Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. It does have to be a full moon.
Yeah, why? I meant to ask you about that, because I was like, I wonder if am I miss a line where it explained that or not? Because she even it isn't even a flat out line by that little, and we'll get to it later when we get to Frankenstein with the Wolfman, of course. But that little gypsy woman who I want to put in my pocket. She's so cute. Yeah. But she she even says, she goes, no, he'll only turn in a full moon, so I'll be fine with him, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Flip back and forth.
I forgot what was the reason they gave him to change in that. Then I forgot. I'm
it was
up the two.
He would change if the moon was bright. It was just basically a bright moon, but that actually wasn't specifically a full moon. So he just kind of come out in the middle of as long as the moon was out.
Right, because I was because that's what I was saying to Julie. I'm like, well, technically they have. I mean, you figure it'd be pretty easy to yeah, because it was multiple nights, and I'm like, wait a minute, though, shouldn't it be every 30 days or so?
Yeah, exactly.
Why is it happening every night? I was kind of this is interesting. Wait a minute, shouldn't they be even more confused as to why are these murders happening every 30 days, kind of thing?
Yeah, so that's wild because like in the Wolfman, he basically can change every night for like a week or so.
Yeah, maybe it's like the week of the full moon. Maybe it's like
Yeah.
from like a certain point of the moon to the next point of the moon. He could go. He's
I don't
got
know.
a little window.
I thought it was kind of fascinating. There's also a funny little subplot or funny recurring characters in Werewolf of London. These two drunk ladies or like two alcoholic ladies. They're always finding an excuse to drink. They were hilarious.
They like stole the movie.
Yeah.
It is too.
I will have to say, and to be quite honest, I remember liking this movie way more when I watched it for the first time than I did watching it back for this series. I still enjoyed it a whole lot, but I feel like I liked it a little more like the first time I saw it. I think because just of the novelty of it. Going back and watching it the second time, I could see some of the... Yeah, I'm kind of like Brian. I was kind of wanting more of the monster type stuff. And this one kind of goes back to the early 30s ones where there was a lot more stage production-y, I guess. You know, it had a lot more dialogue and people talking and that kind of thing. So
now do you think, because I know this was it for me, and I don't think I've ever seen this Werewolf of London before. Now that when I watched it back, I thought I might have seen it, but I guess once I watched it, I realized, oh no, I haven't. So I wonder if it's because of the order we've been watching, we've already gotten the Lawrence Talbot, or they call him Talbot. They pronounce it weird.
They say it different, yeah.
Yeah. I might say Talbot. I apologize. It's the one way I'm used to saying it. The Lawrence Talbot Wolfman, we've already seen his character through the Frankenstein movies. So I'm wondering if he kind of made it almost feel like a step back for you a little bit, even though you've seen them all already.
I think so. Yeah, I think the order definitely played into it.
It just tweaked your enjoyment of it because you're you were so into the whole Universal monster verse, and even though this was Universal's first foray into the lycanthropy, but it's not the Wolfman that we know, and that's part of
and I think I was looking ahead a little bit because I was anxious to get to the Wolfman. And so I think that was kind of making me a little impatient as well. It's still a great movie. I think it's really an interesting movie from the historical standpoint. I love Henry Hull's character. I think he does a great job. I love the makeup. When I say I love the makeup, it's not like the greatest makeup in the world in terms of like the application. There's certain scenes where it looks a little cheap, but I just like the design of it more than anything. But I still love this movie. But it is definitely just when you go in watching it, be aware it was made well before the real popularity of the Universal monsters took off. So
right.
You could definitely tell that.
Right. And there's a reason why this didn't become the Wolfman in the monster universe as opposed to the Larry Talbot one.
Right. Well, let's get on to the Larry Talbot one because I really want to talk about the Wolfman.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this one.
1941, directed by George Wagner, starring, of course, Lon Chaney Jr. as Lawrence Talbot, / the Wolfman, Claude Rains as Sir John Talbot, Ralph Bellamy as Colonel Montford, Warren Williams, Dr. Lloyd.
Winthrop, I'm back! No, sorry. I couldn't.
Patrick Knowles as Frank Andrews, Bela Lugosi as Bella, Maria Alspinskaya as Melva.
That's
Evelyn
the little
Anchor.
gypsy woman, right?
Yeah.
Is she not the cutest little person ever?
I love her. Yeah, she's cool. And she was actually the funny little sidebar. She played Bela Lugosi's mother, and I think she was only like a few years older than him during the filming. Evelyn Ankers as Gwen Conliffe. There's a funny story about Evelyn Ankers too. Apparently, Lon Chaney Jr. tormented her on the set because she took his dressing room, apparently, when they first started filming, and he basically gave her hell the rest of the movie. Faye Helm as Jenny, Jim Kerrigan as Charles Conliffe, and Forrester Harvey as Twiddle, which I love. I love Twiddle.
Of course, I had to go to the credits all the way till you got to say Twiddle.
Larry Talbot returns to his father's castle in Wales and meets a beautiful woman. One fateful night, Talbot escorts her to a local carnival where they meet a mysterious gypsy fortune teller. And that's where the synopsis ends. That's great. Yeah. Okay, so this one, I was looking forward because for some reason, this one always is like a gaping hole in my memory. I've seen The Wolfman several times, but I always forget. I always forget it for some reason. I always remember Frankenstein. I always remember Dracula. But for some reason, Every time I watch the Wolfman, it's almost like I'm rewatching it for the first time, and I loved it this time. I absolutely loved it.
I mean, spoiler alert: this one and the next one, the Frankenstein meets Wolfman. I like forgot how good they were and how much. I mean, I absolutely like loved these two. I mean, these are like the two. They go so together so well. Like unfortunately, the title of the second one is misleading, but. I mean, yes, sure, it kind of happens, but you know what I'm saying? Like, that was a Wolfman picture. That was not like,
And a direct sequel. I mean, it could have been called The Wolfman 2.
Yeah, I mean, that's the part, and we'll get to that a little more, because I want to definitely talk about the opening to that one. But, and that's the one that I was like, so it's like it's a shame that was not. That's almost, it's considered a Wolfman movie, but like also like it doesn't give the Wolfman enough justice. But I think what's so good about the original Wolfman is, I think because, so if you think about it, here's the thing. This is really the first dual character now in the MonsterVerse that we're going through this way, that we're doing through this series that we're doing, not in exactly, because like, okay, Dracula was always Dracula. Frankenstein's monster was always the monster. As far as we know, we didn't know his previous life, where his body was,
or his several previous lives.
Yeah, the several ones. Yeah, right. But Wolfman, we're introduced to, for one of the first times we're introduced to the monster not as a monster, and I think well, I mean, for us in this series, I'm going through as we're going through. So pardon me for being off on if I mistimed something else, but so I think that's what's so cool about well, I mean, if you think about it, most of the the Universal monsters are kind of like, well, I guess until we get to the Invisible Man, right? That's where we see the transformation. But so what's so great about this though is that, like, I mean, Lawrence Talbot comes off as like a really, like, almost like, at first he's like likable and not likable at the same time. He's a big womanizer, and he's really like
he's kind of creepy.
Would not fly today.
No,
he's like, I'm picking you up at 8, and she's saying no, and she's got, first of all, she's engaged, right? And
well, let's don't forget how he met her by basically spying on her through a telescope.
And he flat out tells her, and she doesn't quite get it. And then but then he's like insists on her, and then he creeps around the corner on her. So he's like, I mean, he's at the same time, it's like, I think it's just, it's a credit to Lon Chaney Jr. how likable he is in a weird way, that even does all the creepy things, you can't hate him. He does it in a way that you don't hate him. And
I'll have to say, it's creepy by today's standards.
Yes.
And I'm not saying it was right back then.
Yeah.
By any stretch of the imagination. But I'm saying, you look at any movie set in this time period, and that's how the men are going to act towards the women. That's just how it was.
Yeah, so then. It's horrible to say, but the men were, back then the men were in control. The women were like almost made.
Women were subservient,
and and like, what it's like. Hey, if I like you, I'm going to pursue you and court you, and you're just going to have to accept it, kind of thing.
And they're rewarded
doesn't
for
fly
it in
today.
those movies. Yeah, I mean, in those movies, they're rewarded for that behavior.
Right.
Basically.
Right. So. Well, I mean, in some levels, he didn't exactly win the lottery. Hear what happens to him. But I mean, I love the fact though that had somehow though, it's like that whole meeting kind of like at some level, and it kind of leads him to where he goes, because then he goes, by doing that walk, trying to walk with her at night, he ends up with the encountering the previous werewolf man, I guess you could say,
which is weird because the previous werewolf man is an actual wolf.
Yeah, that's
instead of a wolf man.
And see, that's the part I wanted to ask you. Why was he only, like, why was that more of a werewolf? And he's like, is that why he's the wolf man? Because he's like, he wasn't a werewolf. He was more of a
they literally made him a wolf man so he would be a monster in the movie, basically.
Yeah.
There's no there's no logical, consistent reason for why he's a wolf man and the werewolf was an actual wolf.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess if you wanted to like retcon it, you could say, well, it takes time for him to complete the full transformation to be a pure wolf or something. I don't know, but
yeah, I mean, yeah, they don't really. I mean, I think there's attempts to explain things, but I don't know if maybe if you just these movies are very wordy. You got to remember, very dialogue driven, so you might possibly miss a line or two, where there's so many, but yeah, what I like is though as how like literally the thing that like kind of kind of kills the other wolf is like he got, with the cane where he happened to get the silver tipped cane with the wolf, very, very poetic,
and that, here's another fun trivia. The wolf, quote unquote, wolf that attacks him is his German Shepherd.
Oh, that's kind of funny.
His personal German Shepherd.
Yeah,
that he owns.
But
cool.
and it's funny too because it's amazing because even with all his like his creepy ways in the beginning, once he gets that, you realize deep down he's not a bad guy, and he's really tormented himself. And throughout the series, from that point on, he's on a mission to basically save anyone around him by getting himself killed, and he just he keeps trying to get himself killed, and he can't. So he's like, that's the whole plot of basically the second one. He either wants to get cured, or kill himself. Like he's under the impression, like he knows he's going to hurt people he cares about that are nearby him, because they do explain that the wolf, when you will seek the person closest to you. They do say that. I think that,
which is cool because that was in Horrified. Did you notice that? Like when you were playing Horrified, the Wolfman gives you that token, like you're the marked
and then
one.
you're like his in there. And it's funny, I think, isn't one of the characters from this one of the villagers in this?
I think
Maleva?
so, yeah.
I think Maleva or Melva, it says, but I thought her name was Maleva. Oh, it is. I spelled it wrong. It's Maleva, and she's in the little gypsy woman. She's in Horrified.
Yeah.
So as a villager, so that's what's kind of cool about it. I like that. That's kind of like that. That she's in there. Maybe that's the one that I drew to her because she's like a cute little gypsy woman in this. But she's a little tiny, and like especially that one scene in like the drag. She's out of there, and she's so much shorter than him. It's hilarious because Lon Chaney's a big dude.
Yeah, he was a big dude.
He's a big dude, and it's like, and so it's funny in comparison to her, and it's like he looks like he's like walking his daughter around. It's like it's kind of but I love this one movie because I think it's just like just the whole like it really is the classic. It's kind of the classic werewolf tale that we get. We get to learn about the man before he becomes the wolf, and then you get to see his struggle, and that's a lot of how the werewolf movies go.
Yeah, and the other thing I liked about it was it's super like heavy gothic themed, like the whole movie, other than like the intro part where he's pursuing the lady. But a lot of the movie is fog and woods. I mean, huge studio where they built that forest and like foggy, swampy area.
And that's why I like the Benicio del Toro one, because I thought it did a good job of kind of recreating that atmosphere a lot.
Yeah, this movie is like, in terms of like classic Universal horror look and feel. Yeah, this one has it in spades. I loved every scene in this movie was just full of that kind of that Universal monster feel to it.
Yeah. See, I still think, like, how you and I were talking, I think last episode, where we're like, we were saying how we love a current MonsterVerse, but like still make it back in that time period. Like, why can't you just do that? Why do you have to modernize everything?
Look at Crimson Peak. Crimson Peak was
a perfect example.
Ghost story, and it's gothic, and it's told, and it's a period piece. Why can't you make it a period piece?
Yeah, make a new.
They make period pieces all the time.
I would love for them. Yeah, that's how I would want to do it. Like, if they gave me, Universal came up to me and said, "You know what? Here, we're giving you the right to all the Universal monsters. We want you to recreate the MonsterVerse, and whatever you have." I would totally keep it still in that old time frame. I'd still have them interact at some point, but I'd just take the liberties to like maybe add more characters around that point, but I'd still make it that time, because that's, to me, one of the coolest parts of it. modern day thing, it doesn't work because, you can't modernize. Like, although, granted, I mean, we did love The Invisible Man, but not to the thing that it reminded me of the Universal Monsters in
No,
any
it
way.
was its own thing.
That was almost more sci-fi at some level,
Well, what came close to this is the series Penny Dreadful.
Yeah, and Penny Dreadful gets mentioned in the She-Wolf of London, by the way, coming up. They mention, she goes, unless you read the Penny Dreadfuls.
Yeah,
so
Penny
Dreadful, are you?
If you never watched Penny Dreadful, it's basically a series of where you kind of get kind of that MonsterVerse feel, and it is set back in that time period, which is nice. But
I mean, don't you just wish, like, if they're gonna just keep? I mean, like, they tried them, with the Mummy and Tom Cruise, and it just didn't work because I don't know. I think you just need to keep it. You need to keep it. I mean, the Brendan Fraser mummies were fun, but that wasn't the same type.
But they were still period pieces too.
Yeah, but they were still back in the time. But I mean, I want like this time period. I want it back then with the little.
Well, I don't think you can have. It's hard to have monsters when you got internet and you got. Everybody's got an iPhone. I mean, how are you going to have monsters in that?
Yeah, how do you know what's
world?
Real? Everyone's going to assume it's not
know.
real. And second of all, I mean, like literally, you're running in the, you're traveling through the woods, and you can run. What's more exciting? You run to a little horse and buggy thing that's totally exposed that they could easily get overtaken, or like you run into like a Range Rover.
Yeah, I know.
Speed out 100 miles an hour. I mean,
I don't know why. These stories were written back then. You have to. Yeah. It's just to me, it just does not work. It's like when I was playing Call of Cthulhu, the role playing game, which is all based on Lovecraft, and you could do like a modern setting if you wanted to. You could play a modern setting. Call of Cthulhu, which I thought was always, I was like, I never want to do that. I always want to play where most of the game modules were set was back in the 20s, which is the time that Lovecraft wrote all this stuff. And that's where it fits. It feels like it fits there. You try to take it out of that setting and yeah, you can do it, but it doesn't have the same magic to it. And that's why I think if they ever redo these monster films, they need to set them back during that time period. Or at least back in the 40s when the Universal monster films came out.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's something, it's like, look at this. Like now, imagine like, okay, like, the famous Frankenstein, see where they're running around with like, torches and stuff. What are they going to run around now with cell phone lights? I mean, it's not, it's just, you're telling me that's the same as, that's going to be effective? That's not
or you have to change it so much. Like The Invisible Man, granted, the Invisible Man movie I thought was pretty brilliant because they used technology to make him invisible, and I thought that was cool. It was really, really well done. And
but that's not a Universal monster movie.
Yeah,
it's not a monster movie in the technical. Yes, he's a monster in like in descriptive terms because he's a violent abuser and psychopath, but he's not a creature monster.
Yeah, and everything else I think you have to change too much that you get so far away from the original Universal monster that it ceases to become that now. Now you're into some totally different thing, which in the case of The Invisible Man, it worked. But like you said, it wasn't the Universal
version. I think that might be the only
version.
one that might work for that.
Exactly, yeah. So I don't know. I loved The Wolfman when I rewatched it. I was pretty blown away. I thought it was fantastic. But that was not the biggest surprise on my rewatch. The biggest surprise was our next movie.
Yes.
Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. I had no recollection of this other than the very end where basically this is how they end up getting frozen in was it House of Frankenstein, I think, is where we learned.
Right, yeah, this sets up that.
Yeah, it sets that up. That's the only piece I remembered from this movie. Went back and watched it and absolutely loved it. And I think it's because it gives you everything that audiences were looking for back in 1943. It was the first time you had two Universal monsters together on screen, and it continued. It was a great continuation of The Wolfman, which I just watched and really enjoyed, and now I'm getting this really good sequel. Right. 1943, directed by Roy William Neill. Lon Chaney comes back as the Wolfman. Lawrence Talbot, Ilona Massey as Baroness Elsa Frankenstein. Patrick Knowles as Dr. Frank Mannering. Lionel Atwill as Mayor. Bela Lugosi as the monster, his turn at playing Frankenstein's monster. Maria Alspenskaya.
Which I have to say was the weakest part of the movie.
Oh my, yeah, I will get into that. Trust me. Maria Alspenskaya as Maleva. Dennis Hoey is Inspector Owen. Don Barclay is Franzik. Rex Evans is Vazik. Dwight Fry is Rudy. And Harry Stubbs is Guno.
Yeah, I feel like Franzik and Vazik are like you'd see like a commercial for like with followed by a whole bunch of warning things like take Vazik and Franzik, but you may have giant eyeball,
Yeah.
like it's like that's what that reminds me of. But yeah, so I want to say first off, because I don't want to lose this thought, but to me, so far of what we've seen, by far the most brilliant opening out of the monster movies. In terms of a sequel, especially being a sequel, the opening to this movie has been replicated in how many slasher films that we've seen, where a bungled grave robber or a bungled something leads to the quote unquote creature or monster villain slash or whatever you want to call it, whatever it may be, coming back into play in the world.
Because, spoiler alert, the Wolfman dies at the end of the Wolfman. So he is dead, he's buried, he's in his mausoleum, he's in his coffin. And at the beginning of this movie, 2 grave robbers are going to go dig him up, or uncover him, I guess. He was in a mausoleum.
Very Jason Lives, by the way, again.
Very much so,
Very reminder of that. Reminds me of that. But also, any kind of movies where they dig up, they try and, we got to see if he's dead. Or like, we want to steal. He was buried with something. Whatever the case may be, that someone, like 2 morons, show up and unearth something that should.
And it's always 2 morons. It's always 2.
Yeah, it's always 2. Well, you need 2 because they need to have the conversation to set up what's going on. You can't just have like one person in there with like an inner monologue.
And 3 is too many. 3 is too many.
Yeah, 3. It's like you got the 3 Stooges meets the Wolfman. But yeah.
Let me go through the synopsis here real quick, because you guys have not seen this.
Ahead. Yeah,
that's okay. The resurrected Wolfman, seeking a cure for his malady, enlists the aid of a mad scientist who claims he will not only rid the Wolfman of his nocturnal metamorphosis, but also revive the frozen body of Frankenstein's inhuman creation. Which, weirdly enough, this is basically the same plot as House of Dracula.
Right.
He does the same thing in House of Dracula. He goes to the scientist trying to get a cure for his malady. But I will have to say, this one is completely entertaining, not only because you get a great sequel. I mean, the story goes right into from the Wolfman. He's dead. Now you get the whole resurrection. You get to see him basically having to come to terms with having come back to life after thinking he was finally at peace, which is also really, really cool to see. He's not as much of He's fully into tormented Wolfman mode now. He's not as much of a kind of a ladies guy anymore.
Oh no, he's by far he has no interest in the opposite. He's got one goal: either he wants to be completely cured, or he wants to die, and that's his two points. And I think he's pretty much assumes he can't be cured. Right, but
let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is Bela Lugosi's portrayal of the monster.
I never thought I'd criticize a Bela Lugosi role, but
well, here's the sad thing. By this point in his career, I mean, he did great as Dracula. He should have been leading star in all of these movies, really, if you think about it. But for some reason, and whatever reason, I don't know all the whole history behind it, but he ended up getting relegated to these side parts and cameos. Now, he did a great job in Ghost of Frankenstein as Igor.
As Igor, he was great. I mean,
but he wanted to be the lead in the Wolfman. He ended up getting this bit gypsy part. He finally gets his chance to play the monster because he originally wanted to be Frankenstein. Finally gets his chance to play the monster in this one, and in my mind was the worst depiction of the Frankenstein monster ever. Although
Julie came in and was laughing. She goes, "Oh my God, what happened to Frankenstein?"
It gets worse. It gets worse. So apparently he had dialogue in this movie, right? So not the movie you saw, not the movie you saw, but he originally had dialogue. And when they did the test screenings, the audience was laughing every time he spoke. Like, they were cracking up. So they had to basically remove all of his dialogue out of the movie. That's how bad it was. And then what's worse is you've got this ridiculous... This is where you get the stiff-armed sleepwalker walk of the Frankenstein monster that's never been in any of the other movies. Came from this movie where he for some reason, he puts his arms out and does this stiff walk thing the whole movie, and it was ridiculous.
And that is referenced in so many things. Like even in the movie, do you ever see the movie Grandma's Boy? Like the Adam Sandler.
Oh yeah.
And remember they go like Dante's like he gives him the weed. He goes, "It's like Frankenstein." It shows the lady doing that walk, and I'm like that. I don't remember Frankenstein because I forgot this movie, and I'm like, why is some people do that for Frankenstein? I don't get it. That's more of like a zombie walk. Why is that like the walk they're doing? And now when I saw this, I'm like, oh, they got it from this one.
Yeah,
why?
This is
Why was he? And he had that weird smile in it, and he like they basically made Frankenstein's monster like kind of like an irritant to me in this, and I love Frankenstein's monster.
But so this one was. Oh, God. Thank God he wasn't in it all that much. Like the bulk of the movie is a Wolfman movie, which is great.
Which is why is it Frankenstein meets the Wolfman?
I know it should be Wolfman meets Frankenstein. It should have been and.
Really should have been Wolfman finds Frankenstein, frankly, because there was never really an introduction. Like he didn't go, "Hello, Frankenstein, nice to meet you. I'm Wolfman." You know.
And there's some real logic problems in this. I mean, for some reason he's convinced that if he finds the secret of life, somehow that's going to cure him from his wolf thing, or allow him to die.
Oh, see, I took it as that if any man that I thought he said there was like a line or something. Find his secret of life, he can find a way to get killed completely.
That's correct. Yeah, that's what he was looking for. He was looking like, how can I erase my immortality?
Because I think in this they established that he can't die, so his death was never. He never really was dead. Like I mean, that's how I.
Well, that's why he wasn't decomposed. He was like He wasn't. He was basically suspended animation if he dies. Quote.
Right.
And then the moon wakes him back up. So he's always at the risk of waking back up somehow.
And for all we knew, like all this, because it's 4 years later. Now, he may have done this every time, but he's been such a he's just kind of like in that mode. So maybe he just wakes up, wakes up, goes back. But he's just trapped in the mausoleum. So he probably just say, "I might as well just lay here. I'm not going anywhere." Kind of thing. We don't know. We need like a fan fiction to take that 4-year gap, see what happens in there.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is it's got the typical Universal loose, like very loose science, and you're going, I don't know if that's a big bit of a leap. That if you find his book, you know you're going to find a way to die. It was, I don't know. I can't remember the exact dialogue that caused me to kind of question it.
Now, tell me if I'm wrong here, but it seemed almost as if, the Maleva was under the impression that Dr. Frankenstein could actually find a cure to him.
Yes.
Like I think it was like almost this dual thing. Like she was convinced that she could like possibly do it, but I think he wanted to die just because of the past history of what he's caused.
Well, so he was basically like, okay, if he can cure me, great, but otherwise I'm going to find a way to die. I think he was playing both sides of the fence there.
Right. I think he was more like 70 dead, 30 live kind of a thing. Like
exactly. Where she was like all faith in science. I believe that he's a doctor. He's smart, so he could obviously cure you somehow, kind of thing. Which, if she thought that, why didn't she try to get it for her son back in the day? But who knows? I don't know.
Well, anyway. I think because remember if you think like the gypsy lifestyle is kind of like off the grid. Maybe she just wanted to kind of stay in there quiet and like hopefully he just didn't do anything, and they tried to contain him more. But I guess now maybe she saw like maybe once the son killed and then she said, "Oh my God, I should have maybe done something. Now let me." Like she probably felt some kind of remorse for his lot in life at that point. But
this movie, I remember I said that Son of Frankenstein was underrated as the third in the Frankenstein trilogy. Yeah. This movie is seriously underrated.
I agree.
Way more. I will say you never hear about this movie, and it is a freaking solid, great sequel to The Wolfman.
Yeah, and you know what it is? The performances in it, other than the Bela, and I've never thought I'd ever utter these words, other than Bela Lugosi. We're great, like Baroness, Ilona Massey. Is it Ilona or Iona? I don't know how you say her first name, but the one that played Baroness Elsa Frankenstein, I thought was fantastic.
Very good.
She had a really interesting character in it, where she was like, she kind of, she didn't want to be bothered with it, but also she kind of was wanting to defend her I guess it was her father, right? His legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he was a great man. I don't want, but I kind of don't want, I don't really want to, cause trouble here, but I also don't want to dismiss how brilliant my father was, because, never, like all brilliant man, they get too, it's like every supervillain, they're so smart, almost too smart for their own good, that they believe they could just do whatever they can without any kind of consequences.
Well, and it brought back the great storyline of how that constant struggle of the Frankenstein family to keep their name in the clear after all this bad stuff's happened, and they're trying to, there's always that big struggle that they're trying to honor their father's work, but apologize for his misdeeds, kind of thing. I thought that was great. The story for this is fantastic.
Right.
Way more than what it would look like on Frankenstein Meets a Wolfman. We'll just toss some stuff on there for the kids, and I mean, it actually is really well done.
Right, I was just going to say that. They managed to find a legitimate story and plot point to get the two monsters together.
That makes, like, I mean, like I said, the science logic stuff aside, from a high level, the whole thing did not feel that contrived. It felt like a good, like I was satisfied with the reason they were getting together.
Yeah, it made sense. Like, if you hear that there's this brilliant doctor out there that's into, like, the dark sciences, let's say, for lack of a better word, and here you are, you're a Wolfman, you're, like, looking around, like, and you're at your last hope. Of course you're going to go seek this guy out. You're going to see what he could do. Like, hopefully he can end this for me. Either he cures me 100%, or I'm going to just, I'm accepting my fate that I could, if I find out how to just finally kill myself, because, he's got the secret of life. He must know the secret of death, kind of thing. I'm going to go there. It was very, very plausible. It wasn't like, I mean, like, if you look at all the other team up movies, like, even though I loved Freddy vs. Jason, I mean, it was kind of, manufactured. How
exactly. It could have been done better.
Yeah, there could have been a million other ways. And I remember when Freddy vs. Jason was first announced, there was all these rumored scripts and all these things, and almost every one had a better way that they
I know than the actual
than
one.
what they came out with. But then again, I still loved Freddy vs. Jason for the fun of it. And I
remember seeing that one in the theater. That was fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, in the theater, that movie was great. I saw that opening night, and that was like an explosion of excitement.
And let me tell you, that crowd was like 90% Jason, like 10% Freddy.
Yeah, that was funny. I had a very Jason crowd too, and even though if you look online, everyone's like more like, you figure like it was a Freddy crowd, but I think everyone just loves Jason. Like Freddy had the more like, but I remember like when like the crowd went nuts at the end when Jason came out of the water with Freddy's head, and like,
oh yeah,
like the crowd like just rah! Like it was like like a like a wrestler comes out, surprise, like the thing, it was like that kind of thing. But that so any kind of movies where they trying to blend other two characters from other worlds. I mean, Marvel does it okay, but that's different. That was like an established universe from the get go. You knew they were all gonna.
And I'd like to point out this came out before House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula, so this was the first attempt at getting the monsters together. So this plot line was basically stolen for House of Dracula. I mean, ripped off completely, 100%. And then House of Frankenstein, they kind of had they kind of used the ending of this to do that one. But this one, I mean, to give it credit for the storyline, this was the first one to come up with that. So yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a lot of fun. Again, I was probably just in the whole Wolfman mode at the time I watched it. Maybe that's why it colored my perception a little bit. But let's bring everything down a bit. And go on to She-Wolf of London, 1946.
That's the least wolfiest of them all.
Wow.
Now, there will be spoilers in this. So
yeah, total spoilers.
Haven't seen it yet. Yeah.
Directed by Gene Yarborough. Don Porter as Barry Lanfield. June Lockhart, which that was great to see June Lockhart. I always loved her.
Yeah. And let me tell you, can we just say something about June Lockhart? The woman is 97 years old, and she is still acting. She's doing voiceover works for the Powerpuff Girls. I mean, this woman is still... Think about this. When I saw this, I went to look. I was like, because everyone knows her from Lassie and what's the Lost in Space. There's a lot of stuff people know her for other than this. And when you see that now it's 2022, and this woman who we just watched in a movie in 1946, is still acting. That is insane.
Right? Yeah, it's amazing. It's truly amazing. I had no clue she was still alive.
Yeah, and there's one other funny little point I'm gonna make once we when we get into the disruption of it. Once you get into the thing, remind me of it. Don't let me forget it. Like, kind of remind me.
So yeah, June Lockhart plays Phyllis Allenby. Sarah Hayden as Martha Winthrop. Jan Wiley as Carol Winthrop. Lloyd Corrigan as Detective Latham. Denny Hoey as Inspector Pierce. Martin Kozlik as Dwight Severn. Eli Malian as Hannah Eiley. Maybe it's Eiley.
I think Eiley, maybe.
Yeah, Hannah. I guess it's a girl. Frederick Warlock as Constable Ernie Hobbs. A young heiress finds evidence suggesting that at night she acts under the influence of a family curse and has begun committing ghastly murders in a nearby park. So, yeah, this one, there's again, we're going to give spoilers. There's no werewolf in this movie.
Yeah.
This is a psychological thriller, I guess you could say, where June Lockhart is convinced that due to her family curse and because of the influence of someone close to her who is basically feeding her this misinformation, basically trying to drive her insane to make her think that she is a werewolf attacking people in the park when in fact there is no werewolf at all.
I will say, I think if we would have seen this back when it first came out, this would have probably went over a lot better because, it was kind of like almost like it was their attempt at almost like a Friday the 13th Part 5 kind of a thing. You know, it's like a little bit where it's like, oh, we're going to fool you completely. You're going to think there's a wolf killing everybody, and it turns out it's not, kind of a thing. And it's funny, when Julie walked in about 5-10 minutes into this and watched the whole thing, rest of it, she was convinced. She was like, oh, she's not a wolf. They're setting her up. We just both assumed that, like, I had never seen this one before. So I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't think it is her. I think it's going to be one of the other. First, we thought it was like the cousin, the one that was like trying to sneak off to see her boyfriend at the pharmacy, would never allow to. And then, then we're like, oh, maybe it's the aunt. Maybe she's the one. But like we both knew that she was being set up. Like there's definitely subtlety hints that it wasn't her. But but it was fine. But I did not expect it to not be a wolf at all. It's like I expected there to be
What's funny
kind of
is
wolfishness
I remember not liking this one at all when I watched it, but I was misremembering. Remember, it had been years since I'd watched these Universal monster sets. I was thinking in my mind that this was Dracula's daughter. And I was thinking when I watched Dracula's daughter, I thought, oh, this is the one where she thinks she's a killer and she was really not. But I was wrong. It was this movie.
Oh, that's funny.
Yes, I had the monsters mixed up, but I remembered there was one where there was literally no monster or villain in it because it was, I guess, no monster. I guess there is a villain per se, but and it was this one, and I remember disliking it immensely when I first watched it, and here it is. So it's really a shame because this leads right. I mean, 1946. It wasn't that long after. It was only a year after the House of Dracula's, House of Frankenstein's. I mean, the Wolfman character, I would assume, was still pretty much going strong. I don't know why. I mean, this would have been so much cooler as like a female Wolfman movie, like a Wolf Woman movie. And it's just weird that it just ends up being this kind of a B picture thriller thing that has nothing to do with it. I mean, it's really kind of a bait and switch if you think about it.
Yeah, and see, that's what. Remember when I said if I get the keys to the monster, like I would totally make a true she-wolf character in there. Like I would, because that's not really done enough, out there.
There's not a lot of female werewolves, even like modern werewolf movies. They don't do that a whole lot, which I thought would be cool. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's some, obviously, but yeah, that's what
I mean. It's ginger snaps. I mean, there's some. I'm not saying there's not any, but yeah, it needs to be done more often, I think.
Right. Oh, one of the things, before I forget now, so one of the things I always thought was funny is June Lockhart in the movie is, at one point, she keeps shoving the cotton, she wants to shove cotton balls in her ear because she can't stand the sound of dogs, yet she's been in like 30 Lassie projects, like, as an actress.
Yeah, you're right.
I said to somebody, here's your the star of Lassie here is complaining about dog barking, but yeah, no, but yeah, I mean, this one, like, it's funny, like, as a movie, it's not a bad movie. It's just to put it in the group of this Wolfman little series segment that we're doing. It like I think it like kind of gives it it kind of gives it a bad element to it, and it's
Yeah.
no fault of its own other than being put on this.
That's true. We should caveat that it's actually the plot line is kind of cool. It's a kind of a neat little thriller psychological thing where she's being driven mad. I mean, I appreciate that piece of it. It's the context of which we're watching it. We're watching it in a monster film series, and there's literally no monster. So you have to understand why this one ranks low for us because of that. But as a standalone film, I would still recommend watching it. It's not a bad movie.
Not a bad movie.
June Lockhart is delightful in it. I mean, it's worth watching.
The constable character's funny,
Yeah, he's really good. Yeah, I mean, it's a fine movie standing on its own. It's just as a Wolfman movie, even as a werewolf movie, it's questionable. But yeah,
I mean, and it's got the classic, cliches of the time where the villain has to do the big expose that basically costs.
Oh my gosh. I was cringing that whole time. I'm like, are you literally going to sit there and explain your entire plot while you're drugging this girl?
Yeah, you never, in real life, that never seems to, I can't ever picture that happening. In any time, someone comes out to kill you and they're holding a gun to you, they're just going to shoot you.
Yeah.
They're not going to do an exposition. And yet, it's been a movie cliche from whenever, probably before this all the way till now, still they do it. And I get why they do it, because it psychologically adds to the suspense and helps inform the audience of things, because if she just killed her and you never found out why, you'd be like, what the hell?
Well, plus you have to give the hero the chance to stop her in the middle
right
of it.
Yes, I totally get it why they do it. I'm just saying it it's very unrealistic.
Yeah.
And in this one, it's the fact that she would even she just literally drugs her to the point where she's already starting to get loopy and can't see what the hell she's doing. Now she's going to explain this intricate plot she's had throughout the entire movie, she's going to really understand it anyway. And another thing, why didn't she just she was why didn't you just give her a poison? Why was she going to slice her throat or stab her after making her fall asleep? That's the point I didn't get. Why, if you're going to kill her and then explain you had to do it anyway to the police officers, why just not poison her?
Yeah.
Why did you have to take a knife out that would end up being her own downfall because she falls on it when she falls down the stairs? So it's I'm boy, that was got to be the worst decision you've ever made. You calculated for an hour. Well, this movie is literally an hour and 1 minute.
Yeah, it's not
very short.
Yeah, you're not going to waste much of your life watching it.
For 98% of the movie, you've been cold calculating and brilliant in order to drive this woman insane, and then you're gonna fumble on the 1 yard line. It's come on. But,
oh man.
But overall as a movie, if you take this out of this Wolfman bucket, for lack of a better word, it's actually a really good movie, and it's actually it's entertaining, and it's short. It's an hour. You get a nice concise plot. There's no really superfluous things. There's nothing nothing too silly that you haven't seen in a million other movies that you've accepted as great. So, but in this bucket, it's like we said, this Wolfman segment is very tricky. In hindsight, we almost should have just blended it in a different way somehow. Maybe done Frankenstein / Wolfman as
yeah. It's hard. Way. It's hard because when they get into these compilation movies where you have multiple monsters, you have to fit them in one section or the other. Really, the Wolfman ends up being probably the major character in both the House movies, especially House of Dracula.
Yeah, I really think that the problem we had is we did it by sets, and that's why. That's really what caused.
Yeah, this might have been better done chronologically, but
we learned. Yeah, we'll do. We'll tell you what. We'll repeat it next year. We'll do the same thing, same Summer Slaycation. We'll just do it in a different order. Yeah, that'll be the Patreon moment.
Yeah, that'll be the Patreon.
If we ever do a Patreon, that'll be it. We'll redo this Summer Slaycation as bonus episodes.
That'll be the remastered episodes. We'll just go in and splice everything differently.
Yeah, we'll just reorganize it.
Well, it's no surprise that our rankings are pretty much the same. They are the same. That's not pretty much.
Oh, yeah, they are exactly the same. And I will tell you, so I have to say, 1 and 2 are as close can be. And I don't know why, when we get to, let's just go through it. Obviously, She-Wolf is going to be number 4, but there's no fault of its own other than being bucketed into this.
Yeah, She-Wolf is just not it's not a good fit for this franchise. It's still a fine movie.
Yeah. So don't pass it by.
I will say,
expect it to fit in with the rest of them.
Yeah, Brian and I both had Werewolf of London at number 3. I went back and forth between making Werewolf of London my number 2, because I really do like the movie. I love a lot about it, separated from the whole Wolfman himself and the Lon Chaney stuff. I really like the Werewolf of London movie. I think it's really cool. I think it's one that not a lot of people have seen or have talked about. But in the context of the Universal monsters, which is what our Summer Slaycation is about, I had to put Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman over it, because Werewolf of London, like we said, it just doesn't fit into that mold. It's its own thing. It was earlier. It was kind of a failed attempt at launching their werewolf business. And so it kind of stands alone as kind of this separate entity. I love it. Absolutely love it. But it's no surprise that it's Wolfman and Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman as our top 2. Now, for me, I would not go back and forth on my 1 and 2, because I feel like Bela Lugosi's portrayal as the monster is just horrendous. And that to me is enough to take it down to the number 2 slot. And the Wolfman I thought was perfect. There was nothing I could criticize about it. So that's why I have Wolfman number 1 and Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman number 2. But they're both really, really great, solid movies.
Yeah, no, and what I meant by, I don't think I would ever flip-flop them. I'm just saying they're so close because, granted, you know how I always kind of have, the original movie in a series for me always is starts at number 1 and has the, it's its job to keep itself there.
Right.
And, while Frankenstein and the Wolfman, as far as sequels go, is, one of the best sequels you'll find, technically, out there, I think. And that's why it's perfect at number 2 also, because it's well, there you go. It's the Wolfman is just absolutely incredible. Like you said, a perfect monster movie, a Universal film. In fact, I'd almost dare to, it'd be hard pressed to not almost say, if someone said, well, I got to watch a Universal monster movie. What would you recommend first? Most likely I would say the majority would probably say Dracula or Frankenstein. I'd be hard pressed not to put this one there as my, just because it's so, it's everything that you want out of your Universal monster film, Yeah. And it wasn't, obviously Frankenstein was based off a book. So you have that, and Dracula the same, right? But Wolfman, this was not based off of a famous book, was it?
No, it's just
right. So
made
this
up.
was an original take on it, and so even that. So it's it had more of a challenge, that and I just thought it was so good. So it's that, but when I say it's so close is because it really, I loved the sequel so much as a sequel, so it's that's why I say they're very close. I don't think it would ever flip flop, and probably this one of the same reasons you said is because the Bela Lugosi Frankenstein. I still can't believe we're sitting here bashing Bela Lugosi for anything Universal, but it was just slow. It was I think I'd rather have them put Fred Gwynne's Herman Munster in that role.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. He was bad. I'm sorry, he was terrible. There's a reason he wasn't the original Frankenstein, and now we know why.
He was just goofy looking. He didn't even look scary.
I feel like they basically he was whining about it so much they finally said, "Okay, fine, we'll just put you in this one as monster, so you'll shut up."
And you're not going to speak, and we're going to make you look stupid. Because and it's and I wonder, did it say in your book if that was his idea to do that stupid walk, or is it was that the director that said, "Here, we want you to walk funny"? Because it makes no sense why he'd be walking like that when he walked normal in all the other movies. I don't understand.
He was I feel like he was just hamming it up. I don't know, there's one chance to be the monster, so he was trying to go all out.
Probably knowing Bela Lugosi, probably was I'm going to make this my own.
Yeah, and probably I'm going to do this.
But really couldn't think of anything better than putting his arms out in front and walking like a zombie.
Yeah, I don't know.
It just didn't make sense. But anyway, but overall, it's funny for such a really I feel like we almost did this series in an injustice by not including the house, the 2 house movies in with him.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so I would recommend if you guys are watching this series, if you really wanted to just go all in on Wolfman, is to watch Wolfman, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, House of Dracula, then House of Frankenstein. That's how I would do it. I think you really get a good story arc there.
I mean, I don't know. I still think, though, I think they are missing a golden opportunity to just do a classic, old style MonsterVerse, just with like updated effects, but still keep that whole gothic feel.
Well, I mean, they did try it with the Wolfman, and I guess it flopped. So I guess they're not keen to do it again.
You and I know, are way in the minority of loving that film.
Yeah.
I thought it blew me away how clear. I remember it was one of the earlier Blu-rays I got, and I had just gotten my new well, now it's old, but at that point I had just gotten a brand new TV with with the remember when the TVs really started getting that wasn't an LCD, it was the other one.
Yeah.
But they really started getting so clear that it looked almost 3D without being 3D. It was right before the actual 3D boom came, and it was that really just amazing picture that you would never really seen before on home TVs. And I just got a TV that was like that, and I popped that up. I can't speak today. I popped that on the disc in there, and I was just like, holy cow, this is it just blew me, because I didn't get a chance to see it in the theater, but watching it on at home on that, I was just like, this is amazing. And then it just never went anywhere. They could have totally made him into made that a wraparound of the classic monster films. But
yeah,
I kind of may want to go watch that movie again.
I know,
thrown it in here.
I know it's yeah. I urge everybody to give that one a second chance. Now we are back on regular schedule next week. We should be releasing Monday as usual, and this time we're going to be doing the Mummy series. We're going to do the first two films, The Mummy and The Mummy's Hand, which was a big gap. The first Mummy was 1932. They didn't make another Mummy film until 1940, which is really interesting. But then we will continue the Mummy series the following week with The Mummy's Tomb, The Mummy's Curse, and The Mummy's Ghost. And then we get to my favorite, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and then on to The Invisible Man. This is going to be running towards... We got a couple of weeks behind because of the travel and everything, so we're going to be finishing this up barely under the wire before summer actually ends, but that's okay, because as Brian pointed out, we'll be able to go right into haunt season without a break, so that's going to be kind of nice.
And we're already planning. We basically finalized the date. We're just gonna I guess we're gonna start. I'm gonna actually book the hotel this week and stuff, because Tim and I are gonna this time we're gonna do a trip. We're gonna meet up with Tim and his family, and we're gonna do Howl-O-Scream again. We haven't done that. I haven't done that in a couple of years. I think you did it only 2 years ago, right?
Right.
3?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but this year's Howl-O-Scream looks amazing. They're saying they're upping the scares. They're great. And like we mentioned before, Howl-O-Scream is an event that I mean, even though it's always up for best haunt thing of the year, but I don't think it gets enough justice. I mean, how amazing because I think it lends itself to Busch Gardens Williamsburg. The setting of it just lends itself for that, because there's so many areas where it's tight and dark, and so just adding a little smoke, I remember that bridge effect where you're literally walking across that bridge, you can barely see what you're in the smoke, and you just know people are around you. You can't tell if it's a guest or a haunt person. I'm telling you, it's amazing. And the rides at night there are great. Loch Ness Monster at night is just incredible. Verbolten at night is incredible. And Tim and I have not yet tried Pantheon, so we're looking forward to that. And the kids, your kids haven't been to any of those rides, right?
Right. Yeah, they've never been. Yeah, they've never been at all. So
this should be a lot of fun. So we'll definitely, of course, record a bunch of stuff. And I found out that on Busch Gardens site, they did say as long as you don't have a flash photography or lighting or an extended selfie stick, you can record yourself in the haunts. So I have a little handheld tripod thing, which I'm going to rig up, and then maybe I'll have Tim and I going through the haunt. So you'll get to see Tim's jump scares in real life, his reaction that we've always joked and talked about for years.
Yep.
Tim's like, oh, God. So that should be fun. So we'll try and get as much footage as possible on that event. I'm just looking forward to that. I mean, first of all, foremost, to see you and the family, but also to just to go to a haunt event with you is always fun. So
yeah, that's gonna be awesome. All right, guys, we'll see you back here next week.
See ya.